Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 107. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, and commented. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guests today. I also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment has been providing uncompromising quality for over 40 years. Samson products are long-lasting and made of the highest quality equipment on the market. Each project is built from the ground up with the ability to customize every need. The team at Samson focuses on developing the highest quality relationships with their customers, in addition to providing them unparalleled quality in every piece of equipment bearing the Samson name. Learn more about Samson's professional weight room solutions and the Samson standard at samsonequipment.com. I also want to thank Cerberus Strength. Cerberus is an organization that puts the athlete first and actively works towards providing the best quality gear at an affordable price. Owned and operated by active lifters, Cerberus has quickly evolved into a global brand symbolizing quality and trust. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out CerberusStrength.com and use promo code STRENGTH_game to receive an extra 10% off your next order. Also want to thank our sponsor, Sport Kilt. Born in Scotland and stitched in America, Sport Kilt offers the highest quality custom kilts and accessories. Every sport kilt is made in the USA of machine washable polyester blend fabric, offering an alternative to the traditional heavy wool kilt. Sport kilt products are made for people who like to be active and make a statement while they train, compete, play, and adventure. Their kilts are designed for comfort, freedom, and style, made for all the brave ways you move. Check out the No Pants, All Glory selection of kilts and shop the best collection of high-quality, American-made sport kilts and accessories at sportkilt.com and use promo code TSG to receive an extra 10% off your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Scott Leech. Scott is the Associate AD for Strength and Conditioning at the University of Rhode Island. In his current position, he leads training for the Rams football, women's tennis, and women's lacrosse teams, in addition to overseeing all the areas of strength conditioning department. First arriving at URI in 2020 as an assistant, he has previously worked with the baseball, volleyball, and women's soccer teams before being elevated in 2021. Leech arrived by way of Merrimack College, where he was an assistant coach from 2015 to 2020. First starting his career as a graduate assistant coach at Springfield College, he also gained experience as an intern with the strength conditioning departments at the University of Albany, Missouri, and Brown. A former football player at Springfield College, Leech was a team captain his senior year, earning all district honors. Following his collegiate athletic career, he continued to stay active and practice what he preaches, training himself and consistently fine-tuning his athletes' programs. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Scott Leech. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today, I'm excited. We've got Coach Scott Leech on the show, and like any good strength coach in true fashion, he's going to gut this one out today. So I appreciate you coming on the show today, Coach.
Heck yeah. You know what? I'm a little under the weather, but I actually sound like a strength coach now with this grumbly voice for once. So,
Hey, it's perfect. Maybe if you like it, it might be a little permanent in there, a little vocal fry to kind of get it going.
yeah, this might be how I make it into Power Five. They're like, wow, look at that voice or listen to that voice. It's amazing. We need that, you know.
It's a good strength coach kind of grumbling. It's great. Hey, well, I appreciate you being on today. Let's hop right into it. Really kind of want to get to how you started in the strength game. like what kind of got you to this point in your career as associate AD at University of Rhode Island, but really like what got you involved in sports, training, and lifting that kind of shifted into your career?
Yeah. So I mean, I've always been active in sports, always been involved in sports. I think my parents have a lot to do with that. My brother has special needs, so they started a Special Olympics team in our state because our town didn't have one. Normally, towns will have their own team. We didn't have one, so my parents started one, and they were able to do things with my brother with Special Olympics. We did the first ever World Games that was in Ireland back in 2000. We did national games in Iowa, national games in Nebraska, 2004, 2008. So always been around sports in that regard. And then obviously always been around sports myself. In terms of fitness, I think, I tell this story all the time. I was 285 pounds my junior year of high school. I wrestled, played football and all that, but I just didn't enjoy the way I looked. I just didn't enjoy, if you know anything about heavyweight wrestling, you just stand there and flop around for 3 minutes and it's whoever can, sneakily do a headlock at the end of the match first wins. And I just hated the idea of that. And I was like, you know what? Forget this. I'm going to go down a weight class. But in high school at that time, it was 285 or 215, and there was nothing in between. So I was like, all right, we're going to do it. Let's go for it. And between my junior and senior year of high school, I lost 70 pounds, went down to 215. And just the process of doing that, I think really, really ignited my love of fitness. I'm lucky enough that because I was 215, I wasn't big enough to play at most places, but I was able to play college football at Springfield College because it's, D3 triple option, don't need to be that big. Um, did I necessarily know that it's like the place to go if you want to be a strength coach? Not at the time, but in hindsight, I'm like, wow, I showed up at the right place at the right time around the right people. Um, and Springfield College is a big piece to do with my getting started and getting my career off the ground and going from there. So I am a Rhode Island person through and through. I'm in charge here at URI now, but I grew up in Rhode Island. I was born and raised here, and I like to think I have a classic Rhode Island attitude. Is an underdog overachiever. You ask half the people and they don't know where Rhode Island is on the map. It's a small state, and you don't always hear things coming out of Rhode Island. So I carry that big Rhode Island sized chip on my shoulder everywhere I go.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd be honest, I'm probably one of those people with Rhode Island. Like my parents were there for about like 10 months when my dad was at War College.
Okay.
Um, so that was like the first time I got there, but it's a hidden gem. It's pretty cool up in that spot. And I'm sure that there's a lot more that the state has to offer, but it's cool to kind of go back to your hometown area and then like get to represent it and obviously like work your way up from assistant to head to associate AD now at that position. But it's cool to hear about everything that like how your parents kind of got involved and like included like your brother and then started those organizations and like brought it to the town so you were able to kind of be surrounded by that. So I'm sure that shaped a lot of things. And I know watching those heavyweight guys like battle it out to see who's going to get riding time and just squirm at the very end when everybody's just dog tired sitting on each other. It's not a place I really want to be at either.
Yeah, I was like, if I'm gonna lose, let's lose, going out swinging. Let's not lose with just this song and dance thing that the heavyweights do. So
I hear you. But that's pretty cool too that like to hear about like getting into Springfield and still being able to play like I think there's a few places that kind of fall into that same category because I went to Salisbury and didn't really
okay,
know that that was going to be kind of the place to be like along with Springfield and like there's a couple other places that are in that category now where like sports performance and like strength conditioning coaches they're kind of like the mecca in the D3 school and you get so many players that go there that don't realize that it's really an avenue that you can pursue as a career past it. How did that like experience getting in there like shape you? Because obviously you went there to play sports, but like was when did strength conditioning become like, hey, this is the path I'm gonna take, even though like fitness was involved with you through high school, but when did like hey, I'm going to be a college coach at this point in time. Like playing is finite. Like this is what my career path can look like now.
Yeah, I always knew that I wanted to train athletes, and it's funny. Uh, I applied to Springfield College. I applied for their athletic training major, which is obviously the athletic training field, and injuries and taping ankles and things like that. And it was actually a much more complicated process to get into that program. I interviewed, and they just asked general questions. Are you a good student? How do you study? Because they don't want kids that are going to fail the program. And I got into that program, and it was the head football coach there at Springfield College, Mike DeLong. And he said, why do you want to stand on the sideline and wait for kids to get injured? Like, your job is waiting for them to get hurt. You're hoping they get hurt so you can do your job. And it was in that moment. And he just said that because he wanted to make sure I wasn't in those classes, because those classes probably conflicted with practice or something like that. But it was in that moment I was like, wait, this is not training athletes. I'm in the wrong major right now. So I had to fake it till I make it. I was like, yeah, I just care about people a lot. And, I really just want to make sure everyone's healthy and they're living their best. And as soon as we got in the car, I said, Mom, I messed this whole thing up. I'm in the wrong major. And I went through the catalog of all the majors they had at the school, and it was applied exercise science, which is the one I was like, this is the one I was supposed to be in. So luckily we made that switch. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was around so many other like-minded people. Springfield College is such a different place because, um, multiple of my roommates were Division I or Division II or Division III college strength coaches, NFL coaches, professional baseball. My freshman year, that strength coach ended up being the strength coach here at URI that hired me. So full circle moment, he trained me as a freshman in college. And then, 10 years later, when a job opened up as an assistant, he's like, I remember you when you were an athlete. You did a great job. You asked good questions. Like, you've been killing it at Merrimack. Like, this would be a no-brainer. Countless other coaches that coached me, because every year you had a new GA that was in charge of the football program. You just watch them go from Springfield to Iowa, Springfield to the NFL. And you're like, okay, like, this is a viable path. This is a viable career. This is how you do it. Nobody was telling you how hard it would be, right? You're looking at everyone graduate from Springfield and go get these jobs, and you're like, wow, all right, they're doing it. I should be able to go do it too. So maybe it's a little bit of ignorance, and I'm glad I had that ignorance at the time. And it all works out in the end, which is great. But you got to have a little bit of little resolve, because this is, as much as we want to change it, as much as we want to improve this field, and I fight every day for our assistants. I want to get them more in terms of finances and resources and quality of life. Like, it's still absolutely a grind, and it's our job as now head coaches and associates to make that quality of life better for the people below us. But it's still not easy, you know. So I'm glad I had plenty of people in front of me that showed me how to do it, and I'm glad there's plenty of people that didn't tell me not to do it either.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's funny too. I mean, everybody when they're first coming out of the profession, like you're kind of, my old boss would say, it was like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Like you have no idea what you're doing. You're going into a war zone, and you see like the people that you kind of emulate. And that's the cool thing about like Springfield and like Salisbury was the same way. There were so many GAs that were essentially in charge of programs, and they didn't really know what they were doing. They were just doing the best they could and fake it till they make it, or emulating like what they see other coaches do or the head coach do or what they kind of learn, and just put it into a melting pot and then regurgitate it, or like do the best they can. And as like interns or people coming up in the program, you're surrounded by those people, and like you want to be the next GA because that's all you see day in and day out. And then you see them take the next step, but you really don't know kind of the ins and outs of the profession and like what that new job that they just took really entails until you're actually in that seat yourself. And it's funny too. That's exactly what I did at Salisbury. Like going in, I was like, I thought athletic trainer. It's like the name is so misleading.
Yeah.
And I had shadowed an athletic trainer at our community college, and I was like, all right, man, this gets me around sports, but I didn't know you could do anything else. Like I'd see the personal trainers when I worked at a gym, like at the same time, and I was like, I know I don't want to do that and work with general population. It seemed there was no strength coaches at that community college. So I was like, well, I guess it just doesn't exist at the college level. And then I found out like first day, I was like, this is not what I want to do one, and they also told me it was going to take me 5 years to graduate
Yeah.
because I was missing like prereqs, and I was like, no, not a chance, not a chance. But it's funny to see how it kind of all works out and everything. So, I mean, you set yourself up and you put yourself in those positions to see like how small the world is and how like a former athlete, like a former teammate of yours, like ends up hiring you. Like coming into the position that you had, like working your way up from assistant to head to now associate AD, like what along that process, like are you think the big things that you kind of learned? Because it was a quick kind of jump of the ladder, and now you're in a position where you're overseeing a department, staff members, and everything like that. Like, what was kind of the biggest changes that you had to go about learning, and what do you think like maybe you weren't necessarily prepared for to be like a director that like maybe would have helped other people in that position?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think where I want to go with this. So uh, I got here as an assistant, and I was an assistant prior at Merrimack College, so come here to be an assistant. And there was certain give and take, right? The give was better pay, and I was closer to home and around my family. But one of the big cons for me is, I was no longer going to be in charge of football, which is something I enjoy a lot. And I had to make peace with that a little bit of like, okay, I'm very type A. I'm very like I need to have my hands on this and organize it, and I needed to be okay with just being in charge of all the other teams and responsibilities and whatnot. And when our head strength coach, he decided to leave for that entire summer, it was, a national search, job posting and all that. And I'm in-house. I'm the only one left because we had a GA or a paid intern part-time position. So that person was gone for the summer. It was just me in the summer. And I said, all right, this is obviously every day is a job interview. This is an opportunity to shine. And it's one of those situations like the football players that I trained over the summer, they were obviously a fan of what we were doing and what we are building. And, Rudy style, they would go up to the coach's office every day and they didn't put their jersey down, but they gave a recommendation, said he's doing a great job, he's killing it. Like let's have him be the head strength coach. And I selfishly tell the story that, they brought in four other people. They offered four other people before they decided to offer me. And I'm glad that the four other people turned it down. And I could choose to be a little bitter, and I could have a salty taste in my mouth in terms of, well, you wanted all these other people instead of me. And I choose to I say this to people, I don't try to prove people wrong. I try to prove myself right, and that I am the right person for this. I am the right person for this opportunity. I'm not trying to prove anybody wrong. But I do want to I want to make sure I know deep down that I was the right hire, I was the right decision. And I think the promotion to associate AD kind of shows that. I was the head guy here for a little over a year. Had some other opportunities knocking at the door, and the athletic director said, no, like you're building something great here. I want you to continue to be a part of it. And I want you to have your hands on other parts of the department, not just strength and conditioning. So to go and have him say that and have him say those things and that feeling of respect after fighting to just become the head, and part of it was I had never had head strength coach experience, right? And that's such a it's one of those things like, yeah, I get it, I don't have head coach experience, but I can promise you I'm the right person for the job. So and I'm appreciative of our athletic director. He does nothing but give me support and the tools and the resources I need. And I try not to bother him too much, but we've come a long way. I mean, we bumped a part-time position up to a full-time position. We're going to add another full-time position next year. We've increased the budget. Is one of those things I said, we need more resources. We need more tools here. Like we have a nice weight room. Don't get me wrong, but there's more work to be done, and there's a vision here of what we're trying to do, and he supports that vision 100%. So, yeah, it's one of those things like again, that attitude carries me a long way of I'm trying to prove myself right, that I am the right person for this. I'm trying to do the best job I can, not only for myself, not only for the student athletes, but for the people I work with as well. Is can I provide a great experience for our assistants, whether they stay for a long time or they end up leaving and finding something better. Um, Either way, that's okay, but I want to make sure when they're here, they're getting the most out of it.
No, that's great. That's awesome to kind of see that validation finally come from like your peers and like from your supervisors and everything too. And that's like oftentimes it's said, but it's not really shown as much as it should be. And like that's a huge like step forward. And I think your attitude, like the approach that you have to not be like almost like have that victim mentality. And I've fallen to that before, like when I was younger in the profession, like getting passed over from promotions in house and not realizing what it is, but also not getting the feedback to be able to grow. For you to kind of take that as those other people turn the job down and be like, well, I can do this job and I can prove myself right. I think that's a great approach. It's always a hard thing, I think, in the profession because you see admins say it all the time. It's like, well, you don't have head coach experience. Like, how are you supposed to get head coach experience if you won't allow me to have the opportunity to do that? And
Yeah.
like I guess there are opportunities where you can kind of showcase some of those traits, but it feels like a lot of admin are just looking for specifically in your resume, head coach, even though strength coaches, we're the head coach of every single sport that we work with, just in our domain. Have you, how do you kind of help maybe some of your assistants and staff like develop some of those traits or kind of put them in positions where they can lead departments or like maybe project themselves better to admin and like sports administrators and head coaches? Because ultimately those are the ones that seem to hire us, even if like strength coaches are adamant about, hey, this is the right person for the job. Sometimes that falls on deaf ears when they're going to be signing the checks and ultimately making the final decision. How do you kind of groom your coaches and like develop them through your own philosophy there?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that I've found kind of getting bumped up into that associate AD role, if you talk about people's Venn diagrams, right? This is my circle, and here's the athletic director's circle. We like to think that our circle overlaps a good amount. It barely even touches. And that's the thing. You have no idea how much the athletic director has going on their plate. There's a reason there's 7, 8 associate ADs, is so that they can focus on all those things instead of overlap. And sometimes we have this victim mentality in the strength and conditioning department of, my administrator, he doesn't care enough about what we're doing here. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. And it's partly it's on you, right? Is to share what you're doing and educate them. But you got to keep in mind, like it's just such a small, tiny overlap in what they do and on a daily basis. So as the administrator for that department, it's my obligation to continue to share, continue to put things in front of our other administrators or the athletic director that I think are valuable, that I think are important. But in terms of getting our assistants up to speed and getting them more responsibility, one thing that I've done, I've tried to do a better job in the hiring process, is I clearly want to know what your expectation is and what you're trying to get out of this new position for you, this new job for you. Are you leaving a bad, you don't enjoy your current work environment, you want to move to a better work environment? One of my assistants was driving an hour and a half one way, and his wife was driving an hour and a half the other way. And she worked third shift, and he had a 6 to 6 schedule, so they never saw each other. So he said, "What's really important to me is family time." I said, "Okay, so I know that. So when I ask you to do things, I will make sure you can get those things done during the day so that you can be home with your wife in the afternoon. Because I know if you spend time with your wife in the afternoon, you're going to work harder for me when you come to work." Right. And I have another assistant, and he was the head coach at a Division II school, and he just, he kept asking for things and wanting to do more and wanting to push for things, and no one ever supported it. The athletic director just kept telling him, "No, we can't do that. We can't do that." So, that's important to me, that when he comes here and he wants to do certain things, if you're willing to, get our force plate standardized testing procedure up and running, then yeah, I'm going to make sure that you have the tools you need to do that. If it means you need to be around your teams more because you want to do more stuff at practice with certain teams, I'm going to make sure that you have the opportunity to do that. And then that comes down to me advocating for more assistance or things like that, so we can kind of split that workload a little bit more evenly. But it's very important for me to know exactly what you want out of this opportunity so that I can mentor you and guide you and push you that way. If you're a young coach and you just say, "Hey, this is my first job and I just want to get after it," then you're the person that I'm going to lean on and say, hey, can you come in and cover this makeup group because I'm sick as a dog and I can't, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it in. I'm going to ask that person to come in and do it because they said they want to be on the floor. They want to get their reps. They want to coach, right? So knowing clearly what you want to get out of this is super important for me. And then, I always tell them like I am not a micromanager by any means. You are in charge of your teams. However you want to do that. Now I may ask you once in a while, like, what are you doing programming wise? Just to stay engaged and stay involved. And I like checking the sheets and see what's going on and see what teams are doing. But I'm not going to make you program a way that you don't feel comfortable doing. Like as long as you're doing a safe, solid, sound program, I'm good with that. And I usually have figured that out in the hiring process. So I'm not going to hire somebody who has a wildly different programming style than us. And then, I want you to do the things that you're supposed to do. Like you should be talking to our coaches all the time, talking to your sport coaches, checking in with your athletic trainer, sending maybe a weekly report of how the team did in the weight room that week. If it's a team that like, we have some teams where the coaches want that. They want a weekly report and say, hey, how'd they do? What's going on there? So I don't micromanage by any means. I just want you to do that. The other thing I ask of our guys too is, I'm not going to overwhelm you with projects. Every once in a while, I may ask you to do something for me. If I'm asking you, it's because it would really help me out to do it. Like these guys know that if I'm asking you, it means I can still do it myself, but it would really help me to do it. But I want them to come to me with things like, hey, I would really like to take this on. One of my assistants said, I want to be the social media guy this year. Like you did social media past couple of years. Let me be in charge of that. Let me run that thing. Great. You got that. Now I'm going to ask you when you're not posting weekly or something like that. Hey, what's going on? I thought you said you wanted to be in charge of this, but I want people to be, aggressive. I want people to challenge yourself, and part of it is I got to hire the right people around me that have that mindset. And that's the hard part.
Yeah, that's finding the right people or like with those character traits, I think is the most difficult thing. You could teach anybody any of the hard skills and like you can build their experience and kind of bolster those things. But if you don't have someone that has the right mind frame, like can't work around the athletes, can't communicate, can't do those like soft skill things, or like really just don't mesh with your staff, like you're already setting yourself up from failure. But it's cool to see like how you've been able to develop them and kind of let them run with the projects that they find themselves interested in. Because if someone's passionate about that and they're not feeling forced to do something, like obviously we're gonna have to do stuff that like we don't always like necessarily want to do. But if you're able to kind of take on the projects that like really kind of like stoke your fire, then it's a win-win for everybody. It takes something off your plate, it helps the department, they enjoy it, and then they get to put that on their resume or kind of find some validation from that. So that's a great way to kind of like bolster your staff and like have everybody be excited about getting what they want out of more than just like the job responsibilities, whether it be like family time or free time, or really just like I want to get as much floor time as possible. With I'm sure that probably helps a lot too, because your responsibilities have kind of changed and upgraded, like with your title change and everything. How are you able to like now, like was it a little bit difficult managing, like still leading teams and like doing everything that you would be in the weight room now that you are pulled into kind of that administrative role a little bit more? Like, how are you able to kind of balance those things and still be in charge of football and these other programs that are demanding in the weight room, but still be able to kind of go be a voice for the weight room and be a voice for your department now with that associate AD title?
I think the harder part is having a 6-month-old at home and balancing that and being a coach and strength coach. I think that responsibility has been harder than some of the administrative responsibilities I have. It's funny, like I got the promotion here in the summer, and then my son was born August 17th, and I went on 6 weeks of paternity leave, and I'm thankful that our school allows that. And for the most part, it was my phone is off for the next 6 weeks. These two guys that are my assistants, they got it. And part of it is giving them opportunities prior to that point to say, hey, you got the football warm up today, or one of my assistants runs the freshman program. So I'm like, hey, you got the freshman program. I'll bring it up with the main guys. You bring it up with the freshmen. Let's get it going. So it's not a foreign face. Like I said, I came in a little bit later today. I didn't cover that makeup group because I could barely get out of bed. But none of the guys are surprised when I'm not there and one of the other coaches is going to do it because that's just what happens, right? We just pick up the slack for each other. Um, Emergencies happen, things happen, and I'm thankful we're at a school, we're at a place where it's not the end of the world if your coach isn't there. Like I have a conditioning session later. I saw the coach in the hallway. She's like, "Do you want to cancel it? Do you want to postpone it?" I was like, "Nah, coach, I'm a tough guy. I'm good." Like, which we have a great opportunity here where people are very understanding, and part of that is the reason why I haven't pursued Power Five or other things is like we're at a great level that balances out competitive sports, but at the same time, like people understand, there's life outside of these walls. I have no idea where this question went, so yeah, if you want to bring us back to center, that'd be great.
No, that's perfect. It makes complete sense. And I think that's a great kind of thing that you have and have you're afforded the ability to do that. I think when you get to some of those big levels, like they kind of treat it as do or die. Like you can't do anything outside of what your job description is. Like, oh, why are you going to the doctor? Like, just suck it up. Like the things happen and life happens.
I can't stand places and people that they talk about family and creating a family environment, and it's like your actions will tell me exactly what matters to you, what's valuable. Like if we have a football training session on a Saturday, I'm not making my assistants come in and do that. I got that. I'll handle that by myself because it's just not like, no, I don't, you don't get paid enough. I get paid enough. So I'll come in on Saturday and do it. But you guys don't get paid enough to do that. Or, I'm going to give you time so you can train. Like one of my assistants decided to start doing triathlon training because he wanted a new challenge in his life. And it's like, he finally has the opportunity to do that instead of being his previous he was the head strength coach at a D2 school, and he was working 6 to 6, and he had teams every hour. It's no way to live. So, if somebody tells me, hey, I got to go get a haircut. The only time I can do it is like lunchtime. Is it okay if I leave and come back? And I'm like, are you missing any teams? And then no. Okay, like if you handle your job, that's all I care about. As long as you're not doing anything you're not supposed to do, I'm not going to make you guard your desk. I'm not going to make you come in, 2 hours early to set up and then just sit there for an hour and a half. Like, let's just be adults about this and handle our business and then go on and live our lives. So
No, it's great. It's great to hear
because
that
then we come
too.
back and we coach harder. We do a better job, right? Is
Right.
when you had a great night at home and you got to see your family, it just reinvigorates you to come back to work and have a good time at work.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you're able to kind of do the things outside that also bring you enjoyment. Like everybody got into coaching because like they enjoy training, they enjoy being around athletes, like they like the coaching aspect of it. Like for the vast majority of everybody that got into it. Most people aren't getting it for the pay or like are super stoked to spend 12 to 14 hours like in the same dungeon like day after day. Like people got into it because they enjoy the process of everything. So when you have other hobbies or you have families and you have other things that fall outside of it and you're able to kind of recharge your batteries, like you still have that passion for when you come into the weight room and you can give way more back in that time. And especially too, I've always said like as you develop experience and like you get better at your job and you understand kind of the intricacies of coaching, what you can do in an hour, like, is what like maybe an intern takes 10 hours to do for programming. So
Yeah.
time does not always equal that value or like how quality of something's going to be. So being able to have those opportunities to kind of go recharge your batteries, run errands, and then come back and do your job to an even better level than it would be if you were guarding a desk, like it is the perfect kind of balance. And honestly, is what more people need to be doing when it comes to a profession where we already know the hours are going to be long and you're kind of at the you're at the misfortune of schedule changes and stuff of what the coaches say. You're always going to be kind of getting the butt end of something popping up.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think when you're 23, 24, 25, if your motivation is because you love training athletes and you love the energy and the environment, then yeah, that works. Like that can work for you when you're 23, 24, 25. But, when you have a significant other, when you have, you buy a house and things like that, then the motivation and the reason to come to work starts to change a little bit. And it's, I feel it even more now as a father is like, I'm coming to work, yeah, because I want to train you guys. I want to get you better. I want to make a difference. But, I also want to provide a phenomenal life for my son and my wife. And I have to do this so I can provide them that. So I'm going to do the best job I can here, not just to give you guys a great experience, but more importantly, so that I can provide for them and give them a phenomenal life outside of these walls. So, when you're 23, 24 and you're cutting your teeth, you're trying to make it, yeah. Yeah, it's because you need to kind of fool yourself, not fool yourself, but like you need to give yourself some juice of, okay, I'm coming in because I want to see how many PRs we can get today. I want to win championships, and don't get me wrong, I still want to win championships, but I keep doing this because I want to provide a great life for my family. That's a different motivation than when I was 23, 24.
Right. No, that's a great point too. I don't know, in my own experience, I've found that like as maybe some of my maybe not my priorities changing, but certain things taking more of a precedence, like getting older in the profession and then understanding it a lot more. Like I've had to almost switch and go to a different job that kind of fulfills and matches exactly what I want to get out of it. But it's nice to see like you've been able to be in a place and then have that personal and professional growth kind of go together. And then you have the support of an AD and other people within the organization to realize like, hey, like even though he's getting promoted, like he's got family that is expanding. So the roles for what he's going to do outside of the weight room are also going to change, but we're accommodating to that, and that's part of why we're retaining them as well. And it's cool to see that happen and not have to really change like to a different university. So they're very welcoming to that thing.
Well, I mean, part of it is you don't get those opportunities if the person giving them to you doesn't think you can handle, right? So my athletic director assumes and believes that I can handle the additional workload that he's going to give me. And, I just need to be open and honest when there's certain times in my life where I may not be able to handle everything that's being handed to me. But, for the most part, so far it's been good. Um, yeah, it's a couple more meetings here and there. It's more conversations and behind the scenes things than previously. And it's someone told me this, like athletics is a game of being aggressively patient. You need to be a squeaky wheel and continue to ask for the things you want and be okay with getting no 9 times, because on the 10th time it's finally going to happen. You don't know when the $1 million donor is going to show up, but maybe at some point they will. So it's continuing to put your priorities in front of people without being obnoxious about it, right? Being a little bit playing the game. But also making sure that if there are urgent or pressing things going on in your weight room or in your department as a whole, and whether it's education, whether it's trying to get our coaches on board in terms of improving practice plans or things like that. Always trying to just do a little bit more and try and do a little bit better. Yeah, biggest thing I guess is the education, because like I said, that Venn diagram, strength and conditioning is such a small piece, even for all of our coaches, right? It's such a small piece. So it's our job to kind of educate them and hopefully make that circle a little bit bigger, make that overlap a little bit bigger.
No, I think that's a great way to put it too. And like you being like in that room and kind of realizing and having the forethought to kind of step back and see like how it's not that they don't prioritize strength conditioning. I think most coaches and administrators like see the value in it and understand that there is an importance to it and like there is a necessity as well. But like to your point exactly, like it's not always in the forefront of what they're doing. We kind of like are in the back where we're a background app that's always just kind of constantly running. And then you kind of just cycle over and see if like, hey, everything's good. Yeah, we're fine. We're always kind of there, but to have someone in the department that's there all the time and kind of like saying, hey, these are the things we need. We're trying to improve. I think that's great because to your point, like we're not always like the one that's going to be the first thought of as like we need increased budget, we need a better weight room because we already have all those things. But just as much as the coaches and admin are trying to improve facilities, better recruiting, like better budgets, like we're trying to do the same thing because we also know that it impacts every athlete that comes in, not just one singular sport.
For sure.
As like being in those positions, like have you found because comparatively, like obviously, like in conference to conference or just like nationwide, we kind of know the differences between like some of those Power Five schools and like the resources and the staffing and everything that they're afforded. Being at smaller universities like you and I are at, have you found any kind of creative ways to kind of improve the department or um, maybe speak to like these administrators to kind of fight for more resources and things that you've been able to kind of improve on? Or is it just simply being an advocate and now being in those meetings where you're able to kind of, like you said, be the squeaky wheel and just kind of stay on top of him so that strength conditioning doesn't get pushed to the back burner?
Yeah, so I mean, part of it is figuring out what is going to work best for the people that have their hands in the money. And as strength coaches, that's something we don't even focus and concern ourselves with. Is we just hope that people are going to hand us money, but you need to ask for things, and you need to. I guess the big thing is to always have your wish list lined up and ready to go. Our athletic director here, he enjoys one pagers. So, when I first took over the head thing, he said, "Is there anything pressing that would really help?" And I said, we have 4 Tendo units. I would love to have one for every rack. I think it would make every team better. Um, what we did to accomplish that is basically um, pulled most of our teams together. So any team that wanted to chip in, so our bigger sports like basketball and football, chipped in more. But our men's track team donated enough money for 1 Tendo. Women's track team donated enough money for 1 Tendo. Women's basketball donated for 1 or 2. So collectively, through all of our teams and their booster funds, we were able to get 10 more Tendos for every rack. So, there's creative ways to do that. But then the other part is to always have your wish list ready to go. Because I've had things where it's like, hey, this guy wants to donate $10,000. Would you be able, is there anything you would need with 10? And I'm like, if you gave me $10,000, I'd be able to spend it like that. By tomorrow, I'd have, $9,998 ordered of equipment. And I'm pretty sure I did that. I'm pretty sure it was like 990 something. So you gotta always be ready. And periodically I like to put those things. I like to we have a 3 or a 5 year vision for the department, and then also a yearly. I like to do a year going into this year. Here's what we're hoping for, and at the end of the year, here's what we accomplished this past year, as ways to continually put things on our athletic director's desk and have conversations with him in that light. Now, he comes into our weight room and he works out early in the morning, 3 days a week, him and actually the school president. So I have a different relationship than most strength coaches in the fact that I see our AD and I see our school president 3 days a week and they work out together. And I'm able to, write their program, and I don't run them through it. They got it by now. But every once in a while they ask me for a fresh program and they're like, hey, we've been doing this for a while. Can we do some new stuff? And it's working those relationships over, and over time it works out. Like on our donation day, our day of giving, I had jokingly mentioned a couple weeks ago that I would love to get a leg press because we don't have a leg press in our gym. And the school president said, well, how much does a leg press cost? And I was like, give me 1 minute. And I, looked up what a Kaiser leg press cost, and anything less than $10,000, you don't need to take it out to bid. So it worked out that it was $9,000. And I said, it's about 9,000. And he decided to donate the money for a leg press. So it's the president's leg press that's now in our gym. But that doesn't happen unless, we're having those conversations early in the morning and we're providing a great experience. And again, I'm lucky. A lot of schools don't have their school president working out 3 days a week, but I do. So, if I have that opportunity, I need to do my best to take advantage of it. And sometimes good things will happen and you'll get yourself a leg press.
There you go. Yeah, that's being aggressively patient, I guess, and just kind
Yeah.
of understanding the long game. And that's a cool relationship to develop. And you probably had no idea that that was ever going to come to fruition in that way, but being open to all those things and then always being prepared, like you put yourself in those situations to be successful. And that kind of goes the same way with like all the promotions and like working your way up at Rhode Island as well, because everything's going to lead you and kind of culminate to the point you're at right now. So that's a great way to kind of do it, especially, I mean, big school, small school, it doesn't matter. Like all those relationships and communicating with kind of those people in those C-suite areas are vital, because that's where the money is going to trickle down from.
I think the other piece that's huge too is as obnoxious as it can be sometimes is just posting on social media. You know, our athletic director and our school president, yeah, I see him 3 days a week in the morning, but they also will comment on things that I post on social media, and they're like, "This is awesome," or "That's great," or you know, they're obsessed with I put my own training in black and white. I do a little black and white video for fun, and you know, they talk about the black and white looks way stronger than, and they're like, "Can you turn the weight room black and white?" And I'm like, you know, so it's like putting yourself out there. And I tell our assistants all the time, like, you guys need to just put yourself out there more, because the only thing it can do is help. And if you do get some trolls, you're doing something right, and you can just block them and keep moving. Um, but the more people see our stuff, the more people see Roadie Strength, it can only help our brand. It can only help our, you know, individual brand, if you want to call it that. But it just continues to validate the good work that we're doing in here. I know plenty of really good coaches that never post anything on social media. You never hear anything about them, and that's okay too. Don't get me wrong, but you know, we work really hard. Like, be proud of what you do and show it off and highlight it. And you know, you'll get good feedback along the way. You might get your own new ideas or things like that, or just um, you know, just putting it out there. I love to do it for our student athletes too. Um, you know, I think about how many people go to the gym and they bring their camera, and the kids are setting them up these days, but they don't get to do that in college, right? You don't get to do that in your college gym. So I try to get clips and post them. That way the kids can at least get, you know, a clip here and there, and try to get every guy in the team, which is hard to do with 80 something guys, but try and get at least one clip of something that they're good at and kind of rotate through.
That's a really good point. I never thought of it that way too. Like if you go into like any sort of like Globo gym, like rec center, the amount of cameras and stuff that kind of pop out for like athletes, and then like I'm sure NIL makes it even that more of kind of a crucial thing for college, because now you can leverage that and kind of develop like a nice little nest egg for yourself, like moving forward and from athletics. If you're not doing that as a department, you're kind of putting them behind the eight ball, unless you have a really good marketing team, you have a really good like visual like programming photographers and videographers that come in routinely, like as strength coaches. That's a good way to do it. And I hate it. I hate it with a passion. Like even like posting the stuff like for the podcast, like my boss has said it before too. He's like, "You're really good at social media." I was like, "No, I'm not. I hate this." Like I post twice when the episode releases every 2 weeks, but to everybody on the outside, that looks like it's well put together. And like I never thought of like that perception, but you can get the same thing by just posting a little bit about your athletes training too. And like you can see the feedback that you get from it. And it's something that I definitely need to improve on and like come around. But like to your point, they like that stuff. They like to be like in the know, and then like for their coach to kind of in a way like celebrate them too, outside of just like what they do on their field and their performance on the field. Like that's big, especially coming from kind of a mentor or coaching figure like ourselves. So that's a good way to kind of do it for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, so with your own training, like you talked about kind of the change that you had from high school and like kind of body weight and body composition, everything going like from your senior year and like wrestling and football and kind of how it affected everything. What, how did stuff shift when you started coaching? Because I know that you and getting out of athletics, like being a GA, it's different. You're kind of just doing everything. You're kind of program hopping and just figuring out stuff as it goes. How is like over the course of your career, your training changed, and like what are you doing now that you're putting in black and white that everybody likes?
Yeah, so I have struggled to. I know some people will get done with playing sports and they need a sport or an outlet to continue. And I've just never had that. I've never been like, oh, I'm going to do a powerlifting meet. Like that doesn't interest me. Olympic lifting doesn't interest me. Jujitsu or things like that. It's just not my cup of tea. Um, I don't know if it's just, if I'm going to compete, it's an all or nothing thing. And I don't know if I'm willing to commit everything that would be required. And if I don't win, I'm not going to want to do it. So it's like, do I want to pick up jujitsu now and get my butt kicked for, 6 to 9 months to finally be decent at it? Like, part of me is like, no, because I'm too competitive. I'm just going to be pissed the entire time that I stink at it. Um, so what do I do for training instead is continue to experiment and play around with different programs and um, I'm always trying to come up with some tough, nasty stuff. So um, my some of my favorites are like the Pat Davidson Mass and Mass 2. We've done those back in the day. Pat Davidson was actually my professor in college. He was a wild guy back then. I got a washing machine for a printer behind me, so if you hear that going off, don't worry about it. That's my printer. It's terrible. Um, so do that, and for a while, I had a goal set out that I was going to bench 405. I'd never done that before. Um, so I went out, I did that. I hit it for a second time the day of my wedding. It was thankfully like it was down here by the beach. So we were able to get a little pre-wedding pump down here with the boys at the gym and almost tore my pec off the bone because I jumped from 365 to 405 for the first time ever. But I was like adrenaline and Joe Gilfetter, he's the head guy at Fordham, the best spotter of all time, was like, I'm not pulling that off of you on your wedding day. You're either blowing a pec out or you're hitting it. So that was pretty good. And then I'm always trying different things. So I came up, I researched Doug Young, who used to be a power lifter, power builder back in the day. We did Doug Young's bench program. And, if my max was 405, I finished that program with 4 sets of 3 at 365 twice in 1 week, which is pretty good. But I was walking around at 260 by that point, just feeling thick. And, I knew the kid was coming and so I said, you know what, enough's enough. So I did some intermittent fasting, got into some fat loss programs, lost 40 pounds, sitting now closer to 220, feeling a lot better about it. But, this year, January, I was like, all right, I got down to 220, 40 pounds. I feel great, feel a lot lighter, but I feel small. Um, and one thing I do have is like a monthly membership training program. So if you want to train with me, it's $20 a month, and I send out the program. And I try to make it more than just like, all right, here it is for the next 4 weeks. Like we have a little fun behind it. So it's called the Villain Arc, and it's for the first 12 weeks of the year, it's very bodybuilder focused. It's all about, your villain arc is in the shadows, in the trenches. You got your sweatshirt and your sweatpants on because it's winter time, and you're doing bodybuilding that way. When the summertime comes and you finally take off your sweatshirts and stuff, um, people see the transformation. So put some fancy, some tough guy words behind it and stuff like that. So when once I lost 40 pounds, I said, all right, it's time to get back on a little creatine and get some reps in and try and blow up the muscles a little bit. So a little bit bigger, feeling a little bit better about myself these days.
There you go. But I think it's good that like there's a lot of strength coaches, I think to your point that like maybe not necessarily are always looking for another like strength avenue or like strength sport to kind of top onto. But I think in a way you still kind of did your own thing, but you have training goals. Because I mean, I tell the athletes all the time there's a difference between working out and training, and that's kind of your attitude and your approach to it. And then you actually have to have some sort of performance goals, and you created them yourself, and like you've been able to like do different programs and kind of use those as ways to experiment to test them with your athletes. So I guess without blowing out your pec again this time, like what's the next goal? What are you looking forward to like in your programming leading into this next phase?
And I'm the first to admit, like I've had long stretches of time where all I did was work out. I didn't train. I'm the strength coach that doesn't enjoy working out. Like it's not something that I need to get in 3 days a week or 4 days a week. I need kind of I need more motivation behind it. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. And sometimes it's a very sad feeling. Like you're the strength coach. You should love to lift weights and get after it. And it's like, no, there's a lot of, I spend so much time in this room already. Like, why would I want to go work out for another hour in this room? I've had a lot of success leaving. I've had a lot of success going down to our NARP gym, our student gym, and just training in a different environment. Sometimes that works out really well. But having the monthly membership program has been great for me. It holds me accountable. If I don't do the training, then all these people that want to train with me don't have a training program. So we got to figure that out. We got to get that going. We got 8 weeks. So when this program ends, we got like 8 weeks till, what is it, Labor Day? Labor Day is coming up,
Yeah, I think
right? In
so.
May. Yeah, we got 8 weeks till Labor Day. So we're trying to, I think we're gonna do a little 8 week mini cut and try and get shredded for Labor Day. First day you can kind of go in the swimsuit, take the shirt off, and then the summer's going to be get back to doing athletic things, right? More med ball throws, more jumping, sprints. The only thing we don't really have is a hill here. Incline sprints are like my favorite thing. We had a phenomenal hill at my high school growing up, and I used to rip that thing every day. We have a little ramp, so I do some ramp sprints instead. We got stairs. We'll do stadium stairs for sure. But just overall things that feel like an athlete, like a nice strength and power athlete. So that'll be after a little mini cut. That'll be the plan. We'll do some stuff like that, especially in the summer. I like training outside. I like getting outside more, taking advantage of the beautiful weather.
There you go. I like it. Yeah, it's a little different when you actually have seasons up there. All I have is it's either rain or it's sunny, and it's sunny and hot like down in Florida. So it's different when you have to play to what the environment is outside and kind of get prepared for beach weather because it's I can wear shorts year round, and I probably if I was still in the snow I'd be wearing shorts year round, but depending on the wind chill, I
It
guess.
it it's kind of silly, but like I'm treating it like an annual plan because I mean that's realistically what it is. It's an annual plan. So when we get done with the summer stuff, we might go into more of a strength phase as we get into September, October, November, and then we might finish with some fat loss stuff going into the holidays. You don't know. So um I think more people need to treat their own training like you periodize the athlete's training. Why wouldn't you do that for your own? Pick a couple events that are coming up and you know set those as your markers and then train for them.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to put it too, especially if you're kind of a strength coach that like you fell in love, not necessarily maybe with the weight room, but like being like a football player or being a lacrosse player, a hockey player, whatever it is, and you can't really play those sports to the same competitive level that you were doing before, and or you're not really willing to like put as much effort in because you've got other priorities like coaching, family life, stuff outside of it. Like if to your point, if you don't want to go into it and like the goal is to win, but you're not willing to sacrifice family time and like time like coaching, like what's the point of really doing it? And I found myself in that kind of like mindset too, like when I don't have competitions coming up, because like I'll compete in like two sports, but if I have a big long stretch of nothing where I can't really like put a sport in there, like I don't want to train. Like I don't even sometimes enjoy like working out, but being able to like go to a different environment, like to your point, and like do something just outside of the weight room because your office is in the weight room. Like sometimes you just don't want to be there, but going outside and like going for a hike or going to a different weight room, like sometimes that just reinvigorates you too. Like have you seen like you only usually don't see that with like younger coaches, but like, in your opinion, does that like kind of is that one of the things that maybe like burns out coaches too? Because you found a love for training yourself, and now that you're only surrounded by training, you have no other hobbies, you're there all the time. Like, does that kind of lead to like some coaches being like, I'm all or none, I got to get out of this?
I think it's partly that. I think the other part is like there's this expectation that you're the strength coach. You should want to work out every day. You should be crushing heavy squats and heavy benches and leading by example. And don't get me wrong, like our kids love when they walk by the hallway and they see one of us training and they're like, "Whoa, he's got some weight on his back. He's moving it today." And it's like, yeah, like it's fun to do that, but like it's also necessarily the expectation. Like you don't need to do those things, but you do need to have a healthy lifestyle. I think that's the most important thing. Like one of my assistants I said earlier got into triathlon training. And he barely lifts weights now. He lifts maybe once or twice a week, and it's kind of a grease the groove thing and just, make sure, don't lose it, but he's not trying to do anything other than maintain those movement patterns. But, he's in the pool twice a week. He's out on the bike for an hour and a half every couple of days. The other day he did an hour and a half bike ride into a 9 mile run. And this is a guy that, is an Olympic lifter, is a strength athlete, but he wants to challenge himself and do something he's never done before and learn how other people train, which I think is hugely important for connecting with our student athletes. The whole reason he got into triathlon training is because when he got here, he had swimming and he had never worked with swimming athletes before. So he said, all right, I'm gonna get in the pool and I'm gonna do your workouts and I'm gonna learn what it feels like to do your workouts. And he went from being a terrible swimmer to a less terrible swimmer. But, it's like he got out of there and he's like, I understand why my lats hurt now. I understand why my hip flexors are sore. And he was like, you know what, I'm going to use this to turn into triathlon training and kind of spark the bug there. So it's one of those things like you don't have to fit that mold of like I am a strength coach. I squat, bench, and I deadlift, and I hit max outs. And it's like, no, you don't. But you do need to be healthy. You do need to take pride in physical fitness, wherever that may be. Like if you're somebody that likes to do jujitsu or something like that, great, right? I know plenty of people that do jujitsu and then they only lift weights once or twice a week just to kind of maintain those things. Awesome. Right. But to do nothing, I think is the biggest issue, right? Is you can't do that.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point too. Like young coaches, I think like see like some of like their mentors, or they see the people that are like quote unquote like successful in the field, or maybe in positions or roles that they want to ultimately like be in, and they feel like they need to fit a persona, fit the mold of what it is. But oftentimes like that's not necessarily like true to who they are, and it's not sustainable too. Like if you're starting to look at a career, and I know like some of my old bosses will say the same thing, is like how many coaches actually retire in this field, and most people can't count them. Most people can't even remember like people a decade before, and like what some of those like big coaches before us like started the profession, like what they're even doing now. So to like try to copy what they're doing and realize like by the time I'm 25, like I don't even want to be in the profession anymore because I'm not true to who I am. Like you should start looking at like how to coach the way you want to, like have physical fitness, be healthy, do the things you like to do, and make sure that that's sustainable if you actually want to make some sort of career out of it. I think that's a great way to put it, to like prioritize your health versus actually do thing, just squat, bench, deadlift, just because you feel like you have to.
I think one of the hardest things in this field is understanding who you are. Because for a long time you have to be someone else until you have the opportunity to be yourself. We have an intern he's applying for GA positions and he showed me his portfolio the other day. And he's got his training principles in there and ground-based movement patterns, functional movement patterns, triple extension, blah, 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 like all the buzzwords. And I was grilling him. I was like, what is a functional movement? And what is a non-functional movement? And I'm like, you know that you put these in here just because you know that they are the right things to say and they are the right answers. And he's like, yeah, I know that these are the things that I'm supposed to have in there. I'm like, as long as you know that you don't know these things, like you don't know what's going to work and what's not, then you're going to be a good GA, right? As long as you can clearly say, here's my identity. I'm a young guy. I know my mentors tell me this, this, and this, but I need an opportunity to figure it out for myself of what's going to work, what's not going to work, and how do I lead a team. And if you came in for a GA position and clearly say that's who I am right now, and I think if I was a GA at your school, I would learn what I need to learn, then I would probably take you because you know very clearly who you are and what you're about. And when you get your first job, it's the same thing. It's like, I know a little bit. I know what worked for me as a GA, but now as a full timer, interacting more with sport coaches, interacting more with administrators. There's a lot of things I don't know yet and I'm not confident in, but this opportunity will provide me with that. And it takes a long time before you get to the point where you're just like, this is who I am. This is how I operate. This is what I believe in. This is how I run my department. And not so much take it or leave it, but if you want to work with me, this is how we're going to work together. Um, but yeah, just because when you start this career, you can't just start at 21 or 19 or whatever and just say, all right, I'm a college strength coach. Like you need to pretend to be one of your mentors to get an opportunity so that you can then pretend to be one of your mentors and put a couple little tweaks of your own in there. And then eventually it turns into what is your program? What is your thing?
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. Like you really don't know what you don't know, and then when you're young in the profession, you really are just you're it's kind of copy and paste like what you do know until you actually have enough time and experience under your belt to start developing your own thought processes and maybe throw away the things that you really don't believe in. It's hard though, like I remember applying to places and stuff in the beginning and like putting portfolios and everything together. Even now, not so much like what I put into it, but before it's like I know I have to use these words, otherwise I'm gonna go in the trash can and I won't even get the opportunity to like really defend myself and really kind of like put my best foot forward. You almost have to like fake a resume just to have the opportunity to get in front of the right people. Like, do you guys, are you able to kind of, you talked about how you hired people within your staff and you, what the things you look for, like, what would you give advice like to your interns or like people that are like some of your staff members that are looking for other places? Like, how do you know how to play the game a little bit with like your portfolio and resume and like how you reach out to these people, but at the same time still show who you are capable of as a coach? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think the easiest thing, and I've talked with our interns about this, effort is not hard to hide, right? So it does not take a ton of effort to update your resume to make it as up to date as possible. It does not take a lot of effort to update your cover letter, to put some specific things about Rhode Island into your resume if you're applying for a job here at URI. My assistant Noah, the triathlon guy, he put in there, he went on Go Roadie and looked at some of the recent developments of whether it's fundraising efforts or championships that teams have recently won, and put little facts like that into his cover letter. That tells me you went on the website, you looked these things up, you decided to add them into your cover letter. It wasn't just copy and paste. Now, is 80% of it copy and paste? Sure. I'm okay with that. I understand how the game is played. But that other 20% shows that you put more effort into this and that you care about this and you've put yourself in these shoes than just copying and pasting and switching the name. Right. And the effort thing, and I don't know if it's just interns these days, it's not as high as what I would hope it would be. It's not as high as what it used to be, potentially maybe when I was at Springfield College or something like that. Like, I want to see you network. And if we do have an open job position, when I applied to be the assistant here, I knew that one of the teams would be baseball. So I reached out to every single friend and every single favor, and I said, guys, I don't ask for favors very often. I need everybody and their mother to call the baseball coach and tell them about me. And after the first day, and keep in mind, right, my strength coach, my freshman year of college, was the person doing the hiring. So like I already had an inside leg, but I had, I think, 8 people call the baseball coach. His cousin from Pennsylvania called him. This former coach, our coach, a rival coach, and they all said, hey, this Scott Leech guy is going to apply for the strength job, and they're like, I don't know if you're in the hiring process, but by the time he sat down at his desk, 8 copies of my resume were on top of his desk, right? There's an effort level that goes into this. If you want something, your effort will clearly show. So that's the thing, like, show me effort, show me care. Take the extra step to do a proper email and send me your resume cover letter. Send me times where we can jump on the phone and connect, and then send me a thank you. Like, you don't have to send me a letter. I get that, but an email at least, a follow-up email. And when you send me the follow-up email, mention one thing that we talked about in that email. Because then it goes, all right, you paid attention, you remembered certain things, or, if I stumped you on an interview question, because I try to do that, I try to make you a little bit uncomfortable on purpose. And if I stump you on an interview question, when you send that thank you letter later, do you follow up and answer that question? Say, hey, I know you stumped me on this earlier, but I went back and looked it up, and I really think that, I would do this, this, and this for conditioning instead. Because that shows me you care. That shows me you want to be around and not just a thank you and hope for the best. Effort is not hard to hide, but there's just
No,
not a lot of effort. There's just not a lot of effort going around these days.
yeah, I can see that when it comes through when we do some of our hiring process too. It's definitely different from when I started because I remember and I one of my old bosses at Georgetown kind of surprised me when I had him on the podcast like way back in the beginning. And when I was trying to get an internship, I sent out DVDs like of me coaching like in the mail, and I was like, they were terrible. They were terrible, but he still had one of mine and like pulled it out of his drawer from his desk when I had him on the show. And that was more than 10 or 11 years ago. And he still had it. I was like, he's like, this is different. Like people don't do this. And I remember doing that stuff and I didn't know if it was over the top. I didn't know what people were doing that time, but like I knew how important it was to me. And like I went out of my way to do those things. It seems like a lot of coaches want to get out of their GA and just be gifted a job or expect that like, oh, well, look at all the experience I've had doing these internships. Like, why don't I have the premier teams? Like, this is still a very apprenticeship based profession, and you still kind of have to work your way up. Like, everybody can have hard skills, everybody can have experience and everything, but it doesn't prove that when I put you in front of a team that you're going to have a presence, you're be prepared, you're going to be able to lead them the right way that they need to be led. That stuff takes time and you have to show it. You can't just put that into words on a piece of paper. And you can always kind of fake that a little bit in an interview. But if, like you said, if you put people under pressure and you make them ask questions on the spot or kind of stump them with things, that's going to happen in your day-to-day job. So if you're flustered going through a phone interview or even in person, like that's a telltale sign that you're going to have a lot of trouble when I bring you and I put you in front of a coach whose career is on the line and has been here 20 years and is going to be hired or fired based off of wins or losses. So if that hurts your feelings, it hurts your feelings.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Well, hey, coach, like any good training session, we end the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters for you, four
Yeah.
questions, and maybe overtime. So you can go rapid fire or take your time on anybody. You ready?
Okay, let's do it.
All right, first one I got for you. Biggest influence in the strength and conditioning profession and favorite athlete growing up.
Okay, so I was a fan of like old school. I'm a big history buff. My dad used to fall asleep to the History Channel every day, so I was always a fan of because I couldn't change the channel. He had the remote over there on the couch, so stuck watching the History Channel. But here's a throwback name that a lot of people don't know is Red Grange. He was a running back for the Chicago Bears back in the day. His name's Galloping Ghost. Um, I don't know. That's the first one that popped into my head. I got a bunch of um, weird favorite, athletes and things like that. I like certain seasons, like Cam Newton's national championship year is the greatest, in my opinion, college football season of all time. The fact that he did that with zero weapons at all is wildly impressive. Um, I don't know. I steal from everybody, so it's like, my training is just an amalgamation of everything. Again, for my own training right now, it's a lot of John Meadows stuff. I love his bodybuilding principles and things like that. So we're not afraid to put some drop sets and things like that in there because people, I mean, that's what training is, right? Is a little bit of getting a pump and, you're seeing all this like low set, 8x3, 10x2. Don't get me wrong, like we do strength work too, but part of strength and conditioning was about getting a pump back in the day. So we'll say John Meadows. We'll do that for now.
There you go. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to get gritty with it and go till failure. So hey, I know you got a 6 month old at home. Life's changed a little bit, but when you're not kind of coaching, you're not in the weight room walls, What other hobbies do you kind of use to recharge yourself?
Yeah, Leon kind of replaced all my hobbies, all my free time, which is great. I love that. I'm so happy about it. My COVID hobby that I picked up was woodworking. So I was back in my parents' house, and my dad had all the woodworking stuff in the basement. So I started my own little woodworking business. So I've made some cutting boards, I've made coasters, I made a chess set, I made all the pieces at one point. Um, it's fun. It's definitely something that it's a skill to do, and I would love to get back into it someday. But the table saw is pretty loud downstairs, so it's one of those things I can't really do a ton of that right now. I got two dogs at home as well, so that's the other thing is when I get an opportunity to give them some love and take them for laps around the block and things like that. Um, yeah, my free time goes to that.
There you go. Yeah, it's that saw might ruin nap time and might ruin dad's kind of free time for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, this next one you might have just answered, so we'll see unless there's something else kind of in the back of your mind. But if you weren't coaching, what do you think you might be doing as a profession instead?
I always say if I could go back and do it over, if I had to restart, I would start back in high school and I'd go be an astronaut. It's one of those things I feel like if you didn't decide that when you were 12 or 13, then you're not one going to be physically fit and ready for it. But then two, like it's probably such a I don't know even know the first step, but I feel like it's such a you're either in it at a young age or you're not going to be an astronaut ever. So it's kind of like military stuff, like you're very career and you're in that. So always astronauts always think like space is cool to me. I think that'd be so cool. But if I couldn't go back and restart and I left here today, picked up a new job, I think I'd be completely fine in corporate finance. I talked to a lot of my strength coach friends um, that have left the field, that have got into business or finance, and they pick up the phone and they start dialing at 7:30. Everyone else is in there at 9. And very quickly all their coworkers are like, what do you mean you didn't take a lunch break? What do you mean you made 400 calls in one day? And it's like the strength coach grind is completely different than the regular person. And I had a buddy that got into corporate finance, started making calls, and within 3 months he was the project manager because he had such a work ethic and a drive that just regular people don't have. So I always know that if I decided to leave this, I feel confident that I would be able to pick up another job in a different field,
Yeah, no
whatever it
doubt.
may be.
No doubt. Yeah, those are intangibles you can kind of take anywhere. We funnel them into coaching somehow. Hey, so setting up ideal training day for yourself. Maybe it's a villain arc program or whatever you got going on. What is playing through the speaker system and what is the best post-training meal after maybe some drop sets?
Oh man. I'm not the best person for the music because I listen to the same hip hop playlist and I'm sure you're the same way. You listen to the same rock playlist every single day. So by the time I get to train, I'm gonna put like some lo-fi beats on. I'm gonna put some it's called the Weather Channel. If you look up the Weather Channel music on YouTube, just imagine like the old 1990s Weather Channel. Like it's weird, but it's just so completely different than the rap and the mumbles and the rock and the anger that I just need something different to just get away for a little bit. And I'll pop like we'll keep the music on for open hours. I'll put my headphones in and I'll have my little happy beats going on while I train over it and just hit some nasty drop sets. And I don't know, post-training meal, nothing fancy, probably steak and potatoes or something like that. Maybe an extra scoop of creatine. It'd be fine.
All right, there we go. Hey, so
Yeah.
last one I got for you, for overtime. What is your favorite either under the bar or favorite coaching memory thus far in your career?
I don't know about a favorite. I can give you a recent one.
I'll do
Do
that.
that. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things like we added women's lacrosse this year is a new sport for us. We haven't had them before. They're not playing games this year. All they're doing is lifting weights and practicing, and then they're going to play their first real season next year. Um, but to take a team like women's lacrosse with a bunch of ladies that have never hit pull-ups before, and they do their first pull-up for the first time, or this semester last semester was trap bar deadlift and goblet squats and split squats, and we introduced front squats this semester. And I'm like, have you ever done front squats before? And they're like, no. And I'm like, this is an opportunity to teach you something that you might do for the rest of your life. Like, and it's like, you take a second and you're like, that's pretty wild. That like, I'm going to teach you this. I'm going to show you how to do front squats. And when you retire, you're done playing sports, you may never front squat again, but you might front squat again. And it's cool that like I get the opportunity to teach you that. So sometimes we take those things for granted. Sometimes like we just, especially with high schools these days, there's so many high school strength coaches teaching our athletes these things that when I get a chance to teach them something they don't know how to do, it's a pretty cool feeling.
No, that's a great way to kind of put it. And you don't really think about that too, because by the time they get to us and there's so many programs going on, like you might not realize that, hey, this is the first time they're doing something, like the transfer, how long they could actually use this. And I tell my athletes all the time, like, in 4 years, I want you to not really need me. Like, it's great, go out and find a coach, but help them with new goals or just like kind of keep you motivated or challenge you. But like, you should have all the intangibles and be able to do stuff on your own. But to kind of an 18-year-old come in and not know how to do those things and sit back and realize that this might benefit them for the rest of their life, as small as it could be, as their first pull up or learning how to front squat, like that, there's a lot of impact you can make as a coach and kind of have on their future and their physical fitness and health moving forward. So that's pretty cool, and good luck to them going next year, because I've been part of a new program starting, and it's cool to see them fire it up and get ready for the year and then get their first. I know that'll probably maybe change the memory even more, like getting to see them compete for the first time as a new program. That's a lot of people will never get to experience that. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a blast for sure.
Awesome. Hey, well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on today. For anybody that's got questions, want to follow Roadie Strength, see what you got going on with all your training and everything, how can they get a hold of you? How can they kind of follow you in your training journey?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm on there on Twitter and Instagram. It's some combination of Scott Leech 72, which is my number in college. So it's either Scott Leech or it's Sleech or something like that. I don't know anything. You search my name, you'll be fine. You'll find it there. So yeah, well, I mean, all my stuff's on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. So yeah, you'd be able to find everything from there.
Yeah, we got you covered. We'll tag everything in there. But like I said, Coach, I appreciate you coming on today, especially all things considered, grinding it out under the weather, but still in the office. You got to do what you got to do. So thanks again for coming on today, man. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.